Happy Thursday, pros. Good to see you. If it's Thursday, it's time for Pro Power Hour. This is something we do every week at this time, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. We've been doing this for over a year now. This is a product training webinar that you can attend. So if you're new to our Facebook community or you're new to Housecall Pro and you're joining us today, welcome. If it's your first time, I encourage you put this on your calendar for the next few weeks or take a look at our recording library. We'll drop a link to that. We've covered pretty much every spot in Housecall Pro, every product and feature, just about. So we're starting to re-review things as Housecall Pro evolves and updates. And we'll have a few new topics here and there as well. So we'll drop the link to our recording library. Again, if you're new, I encourage you to go back. If you're going through onboarding, it's a great pairing to have with that. So you can go back and watch clips and just learn little things. And if you watch the Zoom recordings too, one of the things I haven't mentioned before, but I think it's such a great value add is there's transcripts. So if you're searching for something specific, there's one little spot you need help with, you can search for that. You can find the exact spot where Phil or somebody else went over something, and you can get the info. Last week we talked over My Money. It was the first time that we did that. So if you're interested in any of our financial products, I encourage you to watch that recording. But grateful to have Phil back with us this week. Phil is here almost every week. He's one of our onboarding specialists, and we couldn't do it without him. And we're going to be talking about invoice and estimate settings today. So, Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good to be back. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If you are joining us again from another time or have stayed with us consistently, we'd love to see you again. So yeah, today we're really going to focus on invoice and estimate settings. This is one of the things that I typically go over with the Max and Max Plus pros on our intro calls. Just really kind of making sure that your documents are formatted in the way that you would like. Today's not going to be very detailed heavy. It's going to be pretty light today, so that we can kind of easy our way into Friday and then the rest of the weekend. But still some valuable information in here of things that we can do in here to make your documents the way that you would like to see them. So I'll go ahead, and we do have a little bit of a deck, so I'll give you all a little bit of information about what it is we're talking about, where you can find some of this stuff, and then as usual, I'll do a little bit of a demo so that you can see in real time how to navigate through your account to find the things that we're talking about today. So just going to share my screen here, and we have our agenda, just kind of our intro to the invoice settings, setting up automated reminders, due terms, payment options, being able to manipulate your report, or I'm sorry, manipulate your documents in terms of changing or hiding specific things. And as I mentioned, a little bit of a demo and some time for questions. So first thing is just kind of the invoice settings in general. I'll just kind of read some of this information off to you all, since there's not a whole lot, but by configuring your invoice settings, you'll ensure that your invoices include the information you want your customers to see without requiring your employees to change any details when sending an invoice. So an update to default invoice settings. Changing these settings will automatically set for every invoice created moving forward as the following steps for the changing of the settings across all invoices. So definitely a strong call out there is that any changes and most of the stuff that we talk about today, if you don't have these current settings in place, once you put them in place either today or after today, it is most likely not going to affect the past invoices or estimates you've done. So nothing retroactively will be done. It's really everything that you make changes to is going to reflect moving forward. So it's a key theme that's going to come up through most of everything that we're going to talk about today. So the next thing is the automated reminders. So with the automated reminders, it's really to simplify the payment process and professionally notify your customers about overdue invoices. I know we all have our customers that are a pain to deal with sometimes, where you just constantly are bugging them asking to collect that payment. Automated reminders definitely helps. We can set up a certain frequency and set up a certain amount of number of reminders we want to send to our customers. And there's also a couple of other ways that we can reach out to them, such as like auto invoicing, but I tend to see that more towards commercial clients. But all admins are able to adjust your invoice settings to either turn on and turn off these invoice reminders. Office staff with permissions to edit company information are also able to make these adjustments as well. Um, Automated it. I did bring up auto invoicing because I kind of pair the two together, and that's a good thing here is just calling out that unlike auto invoicing, the invoice reminders feature by default applies globally to all of your customers instead of auto invoicing is really tailored towards one specific customer. So when it comes to invoice reminders, really it's across the board, but with our new improvements, you can exclude people based on specific, by their specific customer or by the specific customer tag. We're going to see how that looks together once we finish the deck. Due terms. So when I first started over here, we didn't really have this, and this was one of our big asks was we want to be able to set due terms for our estimates as well as our invoices. Otherwise, like back in the day, we used to have our system be clogged full of estimates that were just never approved. So same thing with our invoices and our estimates. We can now set up these due dates. So there is the default term section in the customer view for when you are in invoice settings. So when you do set up your specific setting, you should see a little checkbox that says, do you want to make this a default or not? If it's not there, you can always go to your settings, which I'm going to show you, and you can obviously make that global setting there as well. Due terms will default to upon receipt by clicking on the blue text box. Will allow you to change this to due upon start or completion of work or set a net number. So if you want it instead of on receipt or on completion or the other option is that you can set up a net day. So if you want to have that invoice be paid within 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, you can go ahead and set that up. A couple of important notes to bring up is the call out that I mentioned earlier is that when you make any changes to your terms on your estimates or on your invoices, that is again only going to reflect all of the ones moving forward. It is not going to retroactively change any of the ones you've done in the past. And another thing to point out is custom due terms are not supported at this point, but if that is something that you would like to see the system do, please reach out to technical support and submit a pro vote, or you can certainly reach out to the community team with those pro votes as well. Another thing that you can set up is your payment options. Now, I have to stress this out that you do need to have your banking connected to Housecall Pro in order to make this work. So if you do have your banking connected, last week we did the session on My Money. So if you are inquiring about what is how to connect your bank account and what is included with that process, I strongly recommend you check out the session from last week. But if you do have your bank account connected to the system, this is where you will be able to set up your payment options of whether you're going to accept credit cards, accept an ACH payment, or if you want to allow the customer to save a credit card on file. I'm going to be honest, within our demo, this is something that I'm not able to necessarily show you just because I don't have my bank account connected to my account. So I can at least point you to where this is, but this is essentially what these three switches look like in your account when you have this connected.
Yep, and we reviewed all of that last week, so if you need help with that, go back and check that recording.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for saving me there. All right. The next thing on here is really just kind of changing and hiding what is shown on your document. I get this question all the time because, again, as I mentioned, this is one of the first things I show my pros when they are getting started with the program. And the most common question I get is, can I format my document? Now, format's a strong word there, and what I'm going to say is that the answer is typically no. But what we do have available for you is that the document is in the particular format that we have designed. However, we do have little options on the left hand and the right hand side that you can use to go ahead and remove some of the information that you don't need or include any of the information that you wish to include. So some of those things, and we'll see them together, are like service line items, service dates versus invoice dates, material line items, the description, the quantity, the unit price. If you want to remove everything and just simply show a specific subtotal, you can always do that make those types of adjustments within your documents. So enough of the slides. Let's take a look at how this is all going to look. So first, we'll go into my account here, and I'm just going to move this over here so I can kind of just go through this one by one. And the first thing is let's talk a little bit about just settings in general. So the first thing that we talked about was kind of setting up the defaults. So for that, I always bring my pros, as I mentioned on that first call, into their account settings. And then if we scroll down, there's going to be an option for estimates and there's going to be an option for invoices. I'll just kind of talk about a little bit of both since we're kind of covering both. I know we kind of in the deck stressed a little bit more on invoices, but we'll talk about the two and what differences there are. So starting with estimates in here, again, this is going to be for your global settings. And when we click on estimate defaults, there's a couple of different defaults that you can have here, like your default expiration date. So again, similar to how we discussed with invoices, we can go ahead and set up if we want all of our estimates to expire after 30 days, X amount of days, X amount of weeks, or X amount of months. You can go ahead and set that up, and you can also make that your default for all of your estimates moving forward. Another thing within estimate settings is that customer can approve. So if we really only have two options, is if you are a company or if you are a pro that likes to offer good, better, bests to your customers or offer multiple options on estimates to your customers, you can set up the workflow so that the customer can only select one of those options, or they can select, two or three of those options. They can select all of the options if you want. Again, can be done on a case-by-case level when you are at the estimate level, but this is setting up your defaults. Also in here is requiring e-signatures for approval. Now, in the mobile app, there is the spot to turn the phone or the tablet around where the customer can sign off on the approve button. But if you don't necessarily have that capability or don't want your technicians doing that, you can still set up this part by flipping the switch. And what that will do is when we send our estimates out to our customers, when they approve it online, they can essentially type in their name and it basically animates a little signature for them. So it looks like we collected signature. For layouts, this is where we're going to take a look at that customer view in a little bit, but this is where we can make any additional kind of default settings for it by setting up a simple layout, side-by-side layout, or stacked layout. We're going to see that in just a minute, but just again, a place where you can set up what you want your default to be. Um, you can also set it up for when an estimate has multiple options, how that's going to look. So for me, I have side by side, but again, just a way to change, what you want your defaults to look like. Excuse me. And when when the estimate has multiple options and the customer can approve multiple options, that can be a different layout as well. Now, speaking of those layouts, here's what they're going to look like. When we hit on the customer view, this is what the customer is going to be able to see. So up here, you do have the ability to change that. So if you don't want to, if you don't have to necessarily go back to estimate defaults to make this change, but we can come up here and have our view of single, which is kind of our old school kind of way of looking at the form, like at how it used to look over the past. But we also do have some nice new ones. So if you want to include some pictures, we can go ahead and get kind of this like side-by-side layout or this kind of stacked looking one. Again, this works great if you use a lot of pictures within your price book. So another thing to point out is, as I talked about, is over here on the left-hand side. This is where we can go ahead and make changes to what information is particularly on our documents and which information we want to keep from it. So like business logo, definitely want to keep that there, but if I don't, I can always remove it. Business name, address, estimate number, customer display name, customer company name. And also down below here, we have when that estimate date was, its expiration date, the date we actually went out there for to do the estimate. So if you have those scenarios where we send somebody out to do measurements and take diagnostic tests and things like that, you can include that. as well as the technician name, which I always think is great because, with Housecall Pro, we always send out kind of that at the end of a job, we send out the review text message. So keeping that technician name on there kind of lets the customer reminds them of who was out there. So if they're going to leave a review, they can have that in their arsenal of when it comes to trying to figure out when to write up that review. So a couple of other things in here. Notice I opened up services. So as I said, like we can go ahead and change what information is on there. So if we want to remove the description of our service, if we want to remove, everything and just simply show a subtotal, we can do that as well. For materials, same idea. We can have line items. We can choose just to show the subtotal as well. And then there's PDF and printing settings. So if you're a company that works in an area with a lot of, let's say, elderly people, you can go ahead instead of having the document set for an email format, you can always default to have it be envelope optimized so that when you fold up the document, it'll have your information up here, right in that nice little clear spot on your envelope. So that's really in terms of the customer view. When we do scoot over to emails and SMS underneath that for estimates, I'm sure everyone has come across this at some point, but when we send an estimate to a customer, we can either send it via email or via text. And we see the little box show up so that we can see what that email says when we are sending it out with our estimate or what that text message says. So here in email and SMS, this is where you can go ahead and customize what that text message is going to say or what that email is going to say. So that's really it for estimate settings. So we'll scoot down to the next thing, which is going to be our invoices. And the first option is going to be invoice preferences, which we see some of this is fairly new. So what is included in this section is there is the switch for progress billing. So if you are a company that does progress billing or progressive billing, have some kind of payment structure that's different from just doing a service and collecting payment, you can always turn on progress billing. And I think we've done a session on this, or at least have talked about it in the past, but it's a great way for if you take a lot of deposits, or as I mentioned, if you're a company that does like big projects and you want to collect like, 20% on the first phase, 30% on the next phase, and then the final 50% at the end, progress billing is how you want to set that up. Matching invoice to job number. Now, if you turn progress billing on, I do want to call this out, is you will not have the ability to match invoice number to job number. And the reason is let's just think about it. If we're working on job 100 and we're doing progress billing, that means, if we're doing that 20, 30, and 50% invoicing, just think about it. If our job is 100, that means that first invoice is going to be invoice 100. That next invoice is going to be 101. And then the next invoice is going to be 102. So really, there's no way to match those invoices number to the job number if you are doing progress billing because simply you are creating more invoices than you are jobs. So if you are not doing progress invoicing, you do have the ability to turn on matching invoice numbers with job numbers because we are telling the system that for each job, there's going to be one invoice. So that way the two match. The newest member to this section is included images when printing and downloading invoices. So when you turn this on to include any job images on printed and downloaded invoices, the setting will not affect invoice PDF that is sent to the customer. So really, again, if you're very picturesque in your price book and you start adding these items and going through those different formats of how you're going to show your documents, this will be the switch that allows you to include the images when printing or downloading the invoices. Next option down is customer view. So very similarly to our estimates, as we can see over here, there's the document that have what the customer is going to see when they look at it. And on the left-hand side, we have the ability to check any of those boxes, uncheck any of those boxes with any of that information we want to include. And we saw up here at the top that that's where we can set up our default terms. So if we want to have our invoices due upon receipt, start of work, or completion of work, this is where we can make that change. And also we can set up our net. So 10 days, 14 days, 30 days, 45 days, whatever you really need. The next section on here is going to be email and SMS. So very similarly to the one for estimates, if we want to customize what that email is going to say when we send out our estimate or send out our invoices, or what that text message is going to say when we send out our invoices. The next thing in here is the payment options. Now, as I described, we weren't necessarily able to take a look at this, but I'll pull up the slide just again so you all can see the picture, or you can, as Chris mentioned, look at the session from last week. But for payment options, those are really the three switches right there on what you can do in terms of the payment options. And then lastly is automations, where it's just where we can set up those reminders that we were talking about. So if we are going to want to turn on invoice reminders, there's the switch right there. As I mentioned, it's going to apply for all of our customers. And if we hit the little edit pencil here, that is where we can set up our frequencies. So do we want to have those reminders go out every day, every 2 days, every 5 days, every 2 weeks? You go ahead and make that call. And then from there, you can set up how many reminders you want to go out. So if I have here, my default is every 3 days, send out up to 5 reminders. So that means in 3 days, one of those 5 reminders is going to get sent out. Another 3 days is going to go by, the second of those 5 reminders. So I always try to reiterate that, because sometimes people get under the impression of like every 3 days, 5 reminders are going out. That is not the case. It's every 3 days, one of the 5 reminders go out. Underneath that, that is where you can go ahead and set up the exclusions. So really for this, I see a lot of people do it for their commercial accounts, or if you work with property managers or general contractors that you do a lot of work with, instead of constantly bombarding them with invoice reminders, we can go ahead and search for that customer and add them to our exclusion list. Or if you've been kind of doing something within our system already where you're using our tags and saying like exclude this customer from auto pay, or exclude this customer from reminders, or do not service, whatever that case may be, you can go ahead and just kind of bulk add them by basing it off the customer tag that you applied to them. And then for automatic payments, again, the bank account does need to be connected. But if you didn't talk about it on last week, I know we've talked about it before, places where you can add a credit card to a customer profile, so that way we can go ahead and just auto charge their card when the job is done. Obviously, we need their permission to add their credit card. So either the first time we offer it to them, we're going to get their consent, or if we're out there in the field and we talk to them and we get their consent verbally, we can go ahead and save it as well. But that's it in terms of the default settings. I guess we have a lot of time here. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just kind of show how we can make these quick changes on the fly. So I showed you how to set up your defaults. Now I'm going to show you is like in real time if we want to make any changes. So if we are looking at an estimate, okay, so here's just a quick estimate that we haven't even put line items on yet, but just kind of want to show is that from the office, when we are looking at it, right there, there is the expiration date, which is based off of my defaults. If I want to make this, a special occasion for this particular customer, I always do have the ability to click into this section to go ahead and set a new expiration date. So that's not going to affect everybody else. That's only going to affect this particular estimate. And same thing when it comes to those multiple options that we were talking about. So if you want to allow your customer this one time to only be able to select one option, you can always do that. Or if you're on one option, we can always switch it to multiple for this one particular instance. Now, I may have mentioned this earlier, but I always say it to my pros when I talk about those default settings is that anytime we're about to send the document out, we can always make changes to that particular document before we send it out. So if this is our default setting, maybe for this particular customer, I want to show them this particular type of template. You can always make that change that one time so that, it's tailored a little bit more towards your customer. Same thing with the visibility. If we want to come on down here and start removing a couple of things from the estimate that we don't want this particular customer to see, we can do that as well. And then lastly, just kind of when I go to send it off, you always do have the ability to make changes to the email. So if you want to do it as a one-time thing, again, this is available to you as well. Now, similarly, when we go ahead and convert this into an invoice, okay, so now that when we have a job and we're ready for invoicing, notice that right over here we have that net 30. This is where I can go ahead and make any changes. S- Excuse me. So while if I want to do a one-time change, I always do have that ability to do so. And notice that there's the checkbox right there. So if we are working in the office and we realize that a lot of our invoices now are moving more towards a 45-day format, we can always do that and set it as our default. And then similarly, when we go ahead to hit invoice, this is where we would be able to make changes to what information is provided and what information isn't. So down below, there's our check boxes that we have seen over and over again today. And there's our payment options. So if the bank was connected, we can go ahead and set up what payment options are available on this particular invoice. And up here in the details, because I get this question a lot, and I think it was one that was given to us before the meeting, is how to go ahead and make any adjustments to invoice dates, again, with those payment terms for this one time. And I'll go ahead and quickly make another example to show what the progress invoicing does, because progress invoicing down below here would allow you to make changes to what amount is due at this particular time. So this is how it looks without progress billing. And now if you all give me just a quick second, I'll go ahead and turn that on and we'll see what that's going to look like with progress billing. Alright, so when we go to invoice and we hit our invoice details, notice now down below it's asking for the invoice amount. So if you're doing progress billing, take a lot of deposits and things like that, this is where we can go ahead and say, all right, on this particular invoice, we're going to take 10% upfront. So that is included with the details when you are doing progress billing. But outside of that, I think that's a little bit of everything that we covered, everything that was in the deck. So I did see the chat popping off a little bit. Any questions come through in there? Um, let's see. About reminders, who do they go to? Can you select specific contacts or say in route notifications and a separate contact for invoicing? So Mark, it's really what which customer it is. So if it is just a single customer and they are, I'm trying to think of the best way to like say this. If they are like your customer, so I'm your customer, you have me in your system, then that invoice reminder is going to go to me. Um, Now, if it is a parent-child relationship where, like the example of like I rent my apartment here, so I have my property manager. If you have me in the system as a parent-child relationship, that invoice reminder is going to go to my landlord because he is the one that is on the due for billing cycle. So I hope that answers your question, but that is really kind of the only two ways those invoice reminders work. So in your example of specific contacts for notifications and a separate contact for invoicing, unless they're that parent or child relationship, that's the only separation you're going to have. If they're like two people that work at the same place, that's only going to go to the one person that is on that job. So I hope that clears that up for you. Um, Alexander, is there a way we can set a due term within the customer for those that are net 30 days? Um, Might need a little bit more clarification on your question here, Alexander. Is because if you do set it within 30 days, it's going to be, you can either set that for everybody, or as I just showed you on this one particular invoice, we're going to make it 30 days. And within the slide deck, we mentioned that we don't have it set, we don't necessarily have like a custom way to do it to say like this specific customer gets 30 days. Okay, I gotcha. Cool. Glad we could figure that out. Good, good. All right. I'll give everybody some more time to get some questions in there. We did have a couple that were prepared for today. So I'll just kind of go through those. Feel free to send more as you think of them. So first one from Matt. Is there a way to send an invoice for a deposit without the whole job moving to due? So as I was going through this, Matt, I'm not entirely sure what you are talking about in terms of the due column, because in our system, the only due columns that I'm aware of, there isn't one in the pipeline. There's no like due. There is invoice sent. Um, and there is no due section on the home screen. There's really like open invoices, and that's pretty much it. But I do know if this is what you are referring to, when we do take a deposit from a customer on a job, in the job section, like up here, it's still going to say due and it's going to show us our subtotal. That is kind of the functionality of the system. There really is no way around that. So would love to get some more clarification on what due column you're talking about, but as far as I know, there really isn't one. Um, the next question from Spencer. Is it possible to add a PO number to an invoice? Spencer, I have been banging on this drum for 4 years now. There is currently no PO field in Housecall Pro. I know that we've been given tons and tons of feedback about this. I'm not sure kind of why it hasn't been available. That's a little bit above my head here, but to answer your question, there is currently no PO field available in our system. What I usually coach my pros to do is just put that as the first line item on your invoice. That tends to work for everyone I've talked to. Um, all right, next one, Rachel. When did the automation go away for follow-up estimates? We used to have these emails go out after a few days and then again after 10 days to follow up, and now there is no option. Um, Rachel, I don't necessarily remember there being too many email reminders. If the only ones that I am aware of and that you may be referring to is the pipeline automations. And that's really the only thing that I am aware of that we would send out a reminder that says, hey, we sent you an invoice or we sent you an estimate. You haven't responded to that estimate, any movement on this project. And you can have the system reach out to your customer 3 times on your behalf with that automation. So it is there, it's in the pipeline. So my assumption is if you don't have that anymore, it's most likely you don't have the pipeline anymore. And if I'm wrong, certainly feel free to reach out to us so that we can understand what it is you had and we can get a deeper understanding of why it's no longer there. But as far as I'm aware, the only estimate reminders and follow-ups we had are within the pipeline. All right, next question from John. Why can't you adjust an invoice after it has been sent? I have to delete the job and create a new job. Okay. So John, not gonna not gonna say that. I'm basically gonna say that's not true because I don't know what I not following you from A to B, but based on what you are saying in here, I'm gonna say that that is not true because when you create an invoice, when you create a job and you invoice, you can always go back to that job if there's anything that you need to modify. So if I send out an invoice for $100 and that invoice hasn't been paid and it's still sitting there, I can go back to that job, modify it, and say, you know what? 10 days have gone by, I'm going to add 5%. And so now it's, $105 and I can reissue that invoice. So what I think you're doing is that you might be going into the invoice section of the system and like I'm kind of assuming and following an assumption of what you were doing because when you open up the invoice, you can't like make changes to the invoice itself. Um, I think now I should just share my screen because this is going to get really really tricky to explain.
Is it a progress invoicing thing as well?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
it's specifically like because I've had some pros like bring this up. It's you're talking about when you're going into this invoice section. And so like here's an open one. When I click into it, notice I can't make any changes. And so that's what I think you're talking about is by opening this you can't make any changes. However, I'm saying is that's not necessarily true because even though I sent this to somebody, I can still go back up to the job link right up here and I can make adjustments down here and then issue a new invoice. So I, I hope that cleared it up because it's kind of difficult to explain that if you don't necessarily see it. But that's my assumption is just you're in the invoices section and you're not seeing that link up there to go back to make your adjustments. Next question is from Carly. Is there a way to automate a message to the customer separate from an invoice sent, letting them know that an estimate has been sent and to contact us if they have not received it or if they have any questions? I've been told our emails have been going to spam or junk, and I've had customers messaging me asking me when they will receive estimates that have already been sent. Um, so if you are having issues where emails are going to the spam, I would just recommend is that you kind of there's nothing really we can do about that. That's really kind of an email setting on the customer side. So I would just if that is a common thing is I don't know if you want to put some wording on your documents or just kind of tell your team is like, hey, when we send you the invoice or the estimate, be sure to check your spam folder. We've heard that, sometimes it tends to fall into there. Um, but there really is no automated message that would go out. The only automations for follow-up on estimates, as I mentioned before, are within the pipeline. So if you are using the pipeline, I would recommend is setting up some kind of message that goes out with your already scheduled automated messages within the pipeline. But in terms of extra automated messages that go out, we do not have that capability currently. Next question from Billy. I'm trying to have the same message displayed on all of my estimates. I can't seem to figure out how to get to a place to input something to accomplish all that. All I could find is customer view, which is allowing me to toggle the message on and off, but not set the actual message. Um, okay, so Billy, for that, I'm going to quickly show you, there's really kind of two places for this. One is that you were talking about estimates, so let's look at an estimate. So when you are looking at an estimate and we go to send it off, there should be, actually, I want to say, So then I take that back. So then the one spot that you're going to be able to do this, at least in terms of your estimates, is if we go to our estimate settings, customer view. Actually, I don't even see that here anymore. There used to be that spot for message on invoice. So then last option that I have for you is up here in the in the company profile, message on invoice receipt and estimate. That is going to unfortunately go across all of your documents. But as of right now, I'm not seeing that message on estimate anymore. So I'm wondering if that's a bug that's going on right now. But typically I have seen that in those two spots that I went to is when you are getting ready to send off an estimate, um, there should be an option to leave a message on an estimate. And then same thing when we went into our estimate settings, there used to be a spot that says message on estimate, so you can leave that. So we just all looked together and we didn't see it. So either that's something that's in the works of being moved or it's a bug. But all else fails, this is the last option right here. All right, next question from Mike. Is there a way to not send automated text during certain times, like late at night? It's one thing to send an estimate later in the evening if someone's waiting for it, but I'd rather have the pipeline follow-up and appointment reminder sent by text after hours. So Mike, just to kind of ease you on that, those reminders go out at 9 a.m. The following morning. No matter what time zone you're in, it's always going to be 9 a.m. So the reminders do not go out all hours of the night or anything like that. If anything is sent out after hours, it is most likely has been done manually. It would not be automatic. Next question is from Casey. Trying to figure out a workaround for estimate reminders. We're coming from Jobber, where our clients receive multiple reminders about upcoming estimate appointments. I'm told this isn't a thing. Sending manual reminders is out of the question. Does anyone have a workaround that does not involve chirp or high level? This was kind of the one I didn't really have too much of an answer for, just because I'm not very familiar with Jobber, but like I can kind of see what you're talking about. In terms of reminders for estimate appointments. Really, if it's an unscheduled, that doesn't even make sense. Um, yeah, I was gonna say I don't actually the more I keep reading this, the more I have as is the answer is no. We don't really have estimate reminders. The only ones we have are just if the estimate has been approved or not. But I think this is good feedback that we'll take because I agree with you. There should be some kind of estimate reminder feature.
There is Pipeline that is an add-on. It does a lot more than just reminders, but um, that's what I was gonna wreck there.
Yeah, that's what I have here too. Is like that's the closest thing we have, and that's only for estimates that haven't been approved.
Right.
Um, good feedback. We'll take it. Next question from Brandon: How to get past due on an invoice? A red past due stamp is on his invoice. Um, Brandon, I don't necessarily know if there's anything else going on, but that just kind of tells me that you haven't let the system know that you've collected entire payment on that. Um, as we kind of talked about due columns and things like that before, the only reason a due you would have due on your invoice it would be is that it's not paid off or you haven't told the system that it's paid off. If it's anything stronger than that, certainly reach out to us so we can take a deeper look. Roy, when sending batch invoice, why does the date keep changing? From my understanding of the system and my testing is that because technically you are reissuing the invoice, so it resets that clock on the due terms for this for all of them. So if I have one that's 3 weeks out, the other one's 2 weeks out, and one is 1 week out, and then I want to batch them all together and say 30 days, now all of those have now shifted into a 30-day, um, a 38 due term. So that's just kind of the way that the system is. If you have any suggestions on improvements, certainly send it in to us with some feedback for those pro votes. But that's my understanding of the system, and so it's working as it's meant to work. And then the last question that we had pre-prepared is from Jeff. Can we set default invoice terms per customer, or do we have to adjust them when billing? Kind of, we've already answered this, is that we can't really set terms per customer. The best that we can do is say, on this particular invoice, it's going to be different from the default setting. Um, but otherwise, it's really just the default settings that we've gone over today. Uh, All right, and that's enough for the prepared ones. I see a couple of things have come up since I took a look. How can I change the bill to name on an invoice once I've sent it out to an incorrect name? Um, I'm curious to see kind of like I know what you're talking about, Jacqueline, but I'm curious to see it instead of like kind of wasting time trying to like rebuild this because that can take me a minute. Um, how to change the bill to name on an invoice because
Is this
sorry, go ahead.
is this in terms of changing? I had to change who I sent it to on a
Like
pro.
because technically it would be the customer
Right.
and it's going to pull the customer name. So you would I'm almost saying that the answer to that question is you're going to have to write up like a whole new job because
If it's under the wrong profile, yeah, you would need to make a
yeah,
whole new job under the right profile. You could copy it to a new job and change the customer. If this is a new client, you just accidentally inputted information wrong, you could change that. But there's no way
right
to
on the
transfer.
Yeah, on the intake process, what Chris is talking about, you could quickly make that change. But yeah, if you've like gone through the whole job and you send an invoice and you sent it to like Phil with one L instead of Phil with two L's, you're unfortunately going to have to create a new job, which you could shortcut it by copying to a new job. But yeah, because you put the customer wrong the first time, you're going to have to redo it, unfortunately.
Good question.
But yes, very good question. Okay, in profile setting for that customer, assignment for jobs notifications go out at all hours. I work late on schedules. How can we turn off employee notifications on off work hours? If I route at 3 a.m., the text phone will go off. They should get it, say 8 a.m. or whatever business hours are. If you're just talking about the notifications on their phones and like getting notifications from Housecall Pro, Um, okay, that so that is what you're talking about. Um, I mean, what I would recommend if they're not on call that night or something like that, what I would recommend is do what I do. I because even in my demos, I get notifications from House Call Pro all hours of the night and all hours of the morning. I put my phone on do not disturb while I'm sleeping. So that would be my suggestion. So you
Yeah,
assigned
well,
it.
I know that's a common pain point that I see in the Facebook group all the time is for both customers and employees. Like, hey, I'm working at 3 a.m. I don't want to bother anybody. Yeah, muting your notifications is a setting in their phone that you would have to have they would have to turn on themselves. And then I've heard the counter argument of, well, I don't want them to forget to turn notifications back on during the day. But that is the
Yeah.
best solution
So
right now.
Yeah, so Mark, you're onto something here that we're working on it.
Yeah, we are. I was going to mention, I've seen some of these questions are very similar to some feedback we're looking for. If you're in our Facebook group, I'm going to be posting today or tomorrow, looking for feedback on employee permissions. So you could definitely include this being there for us to only send notifications to your technicians during their working hours. That would be interesting. Um, so there's something else I saw too, about permissions. So Anyways,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
gonna say it was one other one I can think of off the top of my head is I think with like I think at least with iPhones you can have it set up for like no notifications if the app is closed or something like that.
Hmm.
So if they're not on call, they can just close the app and not get notifications, but then when they get to work, they'll open the app and then they can get notifications as long as the app is open. So definitely look into their phone settings. Um, Okay, Jacqueline, I had to change who I sent it to at a property management and sent it to the wrong manager. Okay, no, it's property management, and each manager has their own profile. So can't resend. What is the property manager? Okay, I see what you're saying. I mean, Jacqueline, you could always just copy to new job or copy to new estimate and then send it to the right property or to the right manager. That would be my quickest solution to that. Yeah, like we kind of mentioned. Okay. I don't see any more in the chat. Wow, and that actually we dragged that out for an hour. All right, let's go. Um, we don't have any other prepared questions. I'll let Chris kind of close this out. Definitely send us any other questions you have before we let you go.
Yeah, I do want to encourage, if you're catching the recording later and you ever need any additional help, the community, the Facebook group is a great place to ask those questions. If you catch the recording of this on Facebook, you can even comment in the thread, and Lauren or I will try and answer you. So please, if you're watching the recording, I always like to stress, don't feel like you can't ask any questions or you're on your own. There's lots of resources out there for you. Um, Next week, we are going to be talking about customers, I think. Yes, customer profile and customer portal. We have some new features to the customer profile, like attachment viewing and bulk downloading. So we'll highlight that. We'll highlight the whole customer profile and the customer portal. So yeah, some updates there. Reporting's coming up after that, and then we'll be reviewing just job details a few weeks after that. So those are some of the upcoming topics. That'll be in our help article. So Lauren posted that earlier. If you're ever curious about what's going to be happening, trying to decide if you want to show up or not, you can find that in the help article as all of our upcoming sessions.
Cool, cool.
Otherwise, we'll catch y'all for office hours tomorrow, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks,
All
Phil.
right. See you then.
All
Later.
right. Take care. Bye.